Hello there, I am Atira and I will be guiding you today. Now then, what is this grammar translation method? Wait, let me summon my knowledge book. Aha, there you go. Let's see. Not here, not here. Where is it? Here. Aha! Found it. Well, grammar translation method is a traditional technique of a foreign language teaching based on direct instructions in the grammatical analysis of the target language and translation of the sentences from the first language into the target language. This method was originally associated with the teaching of Latin and ancient Greek. Latin was the dominant language of education, business, and government in the Western countries. However, Latin gradually became displaced by English, French, and Italian as the language of spoken and written communications in the 16th century. Hence, the same method as used in the teaching Latin is used in the modern days in order to learn foreign language. Wow! What a ride to its history! A significant role of this method is translating one language into the other and allows students to notice the differences and similarities between L1 and L2.
Please, my queen, you need to let them know what is this L1 and L2. Well, let me explain it to them. L1 is a short form for a first language while L2 is a second language.
Thank you, Mr. Pumpkin. I totally forgot about that.
The pleasure is all mine, my queen.
Phew! Moving on. Another purpose of this method is to help students to read and understand foreign language literature, as it is an effective way of learning vocabulary and grammatical structures. Moreover, this method expands the number of figures of speech one can utilize, develops the ability of interpretations, and through the imitations of the best writers, it makes us able to create similarly great writings. This is because translation forces us to notice such details. Wow, that was too much to digest, isn't it? Most of the activities used in this method are very much based on written text, memorization of the grammatical rules, emphasize on grammar and vocabulary, and translating the written text to L1. According to Jonathan Marks noted in Methodology, the grammar translation method, there are a lot of critics regarding this method. And one of them is how this method solely learned through conscious memorizations of the grammatical structures. And this method of learning foreign language is not highly regarded. However, Jonathan Marks argues this statement by stating that different people have different learning styles. Hence, there are people that can learn foreign language through memorizing words, phrases, and implement it in their writing. Moreover, this method is teacher-oriented where the teacher has the authority in the class, and the students have to follow the instructions given by their teacher. The mother tongue language is used as the medium in teaching this method, because most of the written texts need to be translated from the target language to the first language. Wow! There is a statement that supports that statement just now. Well, according to Tim Bowen in Teaching Approaches the Grammar Translation Method, a lot of people have successfully learned their second language through this method, without being in contact with a native speaker of the second language. Wow! This method pays little or no attention to the pronunciation. Let us...
My queen, why don't we let them rest for a bit? It is too much to digest.
Should we? Well then, why don't we take a 5-minute break?
This is for you, my queen.
Why, thank you, Mr. Pumpkin.
Recess time.
Okay then, let us move on to the next point. There are several typical techniques in grammar translation method, such as translation of a literary passage by translating the text from the second language to the first language. Another typical technique is finding synonyms and antonyms for words. Another one is the use of the words in the sentences by making the students to construct a sentence using the new words. Another technique is compositions where students write a passage using the second language. That's the end of it. I hope you guys understand what is grammar translation method now. Goodbye!
This is a summary of methods and approaches in English language teaching. They emerged according to the needs of teachers and learners. This video shows aspects regarding learning theory, language theory, teacher and student's role, and techniques. Grammar translation. This is the first method ever registered. In this method, deductive learning is essential. Rules are taught in the mother tongue. Translation and written language are the way to learn. Oral communication is not important. Classes are teacher-centered. Students memorize everything. The interaction occurs mostly between teacher and students. Some of the techniques used in this method include translation of literary passages, reading comprehension questions, memorization, and composition.
Direct method. In this method, inductive learning is essential. Learning occurs naturally. Oral use is paramount with a strong connection between form and meaning in the target language. The teacher is a guide, helping students work with each other and sometimes with the teacher. Some of the techniques used in this method include conversations, role plays, fill in the blanks, and drawing for listening comprehension. Audiolingual method. Learning is inductively based on the principles of behaviorism via mechanical drills. Descriptive linguistic defines the language, always leading to require perfect pronunciation. The teacher is a model of accuracy for students to perform as well as possible. No errors are allowed while students practice drills. Some of the techniques used in this method include minimal pairs for pronunciation, grammar games, and substitution drills.
Silent way. Based on cognitive psychology, learning is rule formation and rules are learned inductively. Every language is unique and requires visual codification through colors, either for pronunciation or grammar components. Silence from the teacher is important to give responsibility to pupils, fostering interaction among them. Some of the techniques for this method include sound color charts, cognitive color rods, peer correction, and word charts. Community language learning. Cognitive and affective learning are important, paying attention to factors such as security, attention and aggression, retention and reflection, and discrimination. Language is for communication, creative thinking, and sharing culture, which foster an environment of trust. Teacher is a counselor that removes the threatening factor in the classroom, even behind students, to not inhibit them due to his knowledge of the language, helping students make use of the language little by little. Some of the techniques for this method include reflection on experience, human-computer, and small group tasks.
Suggestopedia. Students need to eliminate the feeling of not being able to succeed and overcome psychological barriers to learning. Communication is divided into language and factors affecting its conveyance, and errors are permitted to foster confidence in pupils. In this method, learners learn better if they get the information from a reliable authority, feeling more secure and less inhibited. Some of the techniques in this method are classroom setup for comfort, visualization, music, and choosing a new identity. Total physical response. Based on an innate value program to learn languages via physical movement. Verbs in the imperative are the central linguistic motif around the language. Used in the learning are organized. Initially, the teacher directs all students' behavior. Afterwards, students can be directors too. Use of commands, role reversal, and action sequence are the techniques used in this method.
Cognitive approach. There is the assumption that responses are the result of insight and intentional patterning. Language is seen as traditional grammar and as an operation or communicative function. The teacher gives meaningful and meaningless pattern drills exploiting various relationships. Students experience production of new learning from their previous schemata. Some techniques in this approach include application, implication, and collocation relationships. Communicative approach. Based on meaningful activities that promote real communication to achieve effective learning. Communicative competence is necessary for any social context, and there is a great focus on meaning and function. The teacher acts as a facilitator and monitor, while students perform active negotiation of meaning. Some of the techniques used are authentic materials, language games, and fill in the gap.
The humanistic approach, based on the system of responsibility, free will, and striving towards personal growth and fulfillment. The humanistic approach practices teaching language items, teaching skills, and teacher status, and flexibility. The teacher is a facilitator and an enabler, fostering an emotionally secure environment, while students are involved in social affective learning activities. Some techniques in this approach include cooperation, mind, and interest arousal. Task-based language learning. Focus on the use of authentic language and on meaningful tasks using the target language. It segments the target language into discrete linguistic items such as points of grammar, lexical items, and functions. The teacher is an observer or counselor. Students are engaged and motivated in the second language task. Some of its techniques include cooperation, brainstorming, and linguistic skill building.
Okay, dear Bethlehemite teachers, we hope that you have enjoyed week 1 so far. The first method that we are going to go through is this one, the grammar translation method. We are not going to spend much time in it because it doesn't have a lot to offer to us, Bethlehemite schools in Latin America. But still, we are going to have an overview. This method was mainly used from 1466 to 1536, and sometimes we can still see glimpses of it nowadays in certain contexts, and you are going to see why. It is very old, so this is just for you to know, but not really to use, right? This method was mainly used to teach Latin and Greek back in the early 19th and 20th centuries. The purpose of it was helping students with literature understanding. That was the idea, that students were able to read and to access foreign language literature. However, they didn't think about the regular use of the language. For this reason, teaching a language back then was highly academic. And we can question that about this method. We can train students to read literature from other countries, but does that make students better users of the language? Good point. Okay, and it is very important to know that this method was teacher-centered. That means that learners were not very active back then. And the teacher, he or she was the one who had the correct answers. That doesn't sound very convenient, right? Teachers who used this method used to focus a lot on grammar. They used to translate very often to explain the language, and sometimes, translation could be useful sometimes, but they should really be our last resource. We should try everything first, realia, images, body language, gestures, and so on. This is more challenging and more meaningful for our students' brains than just giving them the direct translation. If we just give them the word right away, what mental challenge is there for students to do? Good point again. When teachers used this method, they used to explain English in the student's mother tongue. There was little active use of the target language. They used to teach long lists of words in an isolated way. And that doesn't look very convenient, does it? Grammar was intensively and extensively explained. Students were asked to focus a lot on the language and not on the content, and that would be a problem nowadays. This method didn't allow students to create their own meanings and express their own ideas and feelings in English. Why? Because there was not much interaction. And that is definitely not convenient at all. At that time, students had no contact with native speakers, and teachers didn't necessarily have to be good at speaking English, and this, beloved colleagues, decreases the quality of learning. But well, as everything in life, there were a few advantages of this method. When this method was used, it was thought and then proved that students could become more and more familiar with the grammar of their mother tongue when they were explicitly analyzing the grammar of the foreign language that they were learning. This means that students raised awareness upon their own language by carefully studying the grammar of a foreign one. This method was very mental as well. There was a lot of analysis involved. For this reason, this method was also conceived as pure mental exercise. Some common activities about this method were translating a passage of literature, memorizing isolated word lists, translating sentences. Teachers used to explain a rule, and students had to apply it in different examples, and the typical fill-in-the-blank activities. Now, dear Bethlehemite teachers, let's reflect. First point, first question, from your own point of view, can Bethlehemite students benefit from this method, the grammar translation method? Why? And second question, should we use it in our Bethlehemite classrooms? Why or why not?